Hampstead Heath by Marika Cobbold, published by Arcadia Books, and of course, this is a book that is set largely, unsurprisingly, on Hampstead Heath, and it is a zany story. I mean, that's the word that came to mind when I was reading this. So, yeah, it's full of fun, and it has at the heart a very interesting story. Thorn Marsh is a very dedicated journalist. She was actually born Rose, and so get the juxtaposition between Rose and Thorn. I'm sure she's a thorn in many people's sides. She is wedded to her work, so much so that her husband Nick has left her for another woman because, you know, she was working all the time and not paying much attention to the relationship. The two of them, however, are on pretty good terms, and one day he is walking through Hampstead Heath, and the Viaduct, which many of you will know if you're familiar with the area, you know, is a real sight in the area, and he sees a man jump off the bridge, and he happens to capture that moment as he's jumping. He shares this photo with Thorn. Thorn then takes things into her own hands. Thorn at her local paper is working on the news desk. She relishes it, she loves it. But then there's a change, and she is sent off to work for a midweek lifestyle section of the paper, which is really not her thing. She then gets a bit drunk, she looks at this photograph, and she creates a story about the angel of the heath as he jumps and he goes to rescue a woman. Those two stories don't match, but in her imagination they do, and she sends it off. It gets published, and the whole story takes on a life of its own. But who is this man? She has in fact bumped into him once over a dialogue over Jilly, who is not a female dog, that's a male dog. She walks Jilly for her friend next door, and they have a short conversation, and so she is familiar with him, and therefore she has a sense of who he might be. She then gets a tip off that he is actually in hospital and that he is concussed and in a pretty poor way. She realises, of course, that when he comes to, he may well remember his real story and will not be party to her fabrication. So Thorn has got herself into some pretty deep water, and as she goes around Hampstead, she wonders, she debates how she is going to sort this whole big mess out. It's a really interesting story. I mean, it's an uplifting story because this man becomes the angel of Hampstead Heath, and you know, it's about feel-good stories, it's about fake news. There are some sidelines. We meet Thorn's mother. We've obviously met Jilly the dog, who keeps popping up and seems like a right little character, and there are plenty of bits and pieces that sometimes means the story goes down a few rabbit holes, but it soon comes back again to that central narrative, which is really uplifting and is a great creation by the author. So if you fancy something just a little bit different, and perhaps you are familiar with Hampstead Heath, there is of course a trip also to Louis, the erstwhile Hungarian cafe, which I think has changed hands, but it's such an icon in the area. Then I think you might well enjoy On Hampstead Heath by Marika Cobbold, beautifully set in Hampstead and London, and you know, just something a little bit different.